welcome back. And welcome back. We're going to go into our fourth module, which is what I call employee engagement. We talked about customer engagement, but now let's look internally. How do we get the people with whom we work engaged at what they do every day? Remember what I said, the more engaged our people, the better the outcome for the customer, the better the experience. So when we talk about employee engagement, Sears said in 2011 that a 5% increase in our employee engagement led to a 1.8% increase in customer loyalty and a 0.5% increase in financial results. One of the questions that I get as I travel internationally is, how do you measure engagement? There are tools out there. I need to educate myself because I'm not sure how, but once we measure it, the bottom line is the bottom line. In other words, once we get people more engaged in what we do, the more it affects our bottom line. The whole thing with getting our people engaged is that we have to expect everybody to play a role. And we have to understand that it's not just an event, this customer experience thing. It's an ongoing process. Engagement is an ongoing process. Employee engagement is the degree to which employees are emotionally connected and committed to their organization and their role in the customer experience. So I like to look at it at this. I think employee engagement is their personal capability. What are they capable of doing, minus the minimum requirements of the job, and then it's what I call discretionary effort. That's what engagement is. It's what's left over. You want to put it another way? I look at it like this. It's the oomph. What oomph is an employee willing to give us, to go the extra mile? Remember what I said, it's not about satisfaction. It's about being engaged, truly wanting, why do they get up in the morning and do what they do? It's the oomph. So Gallup organization, I mentioned in one of the other modules, they did a survey in 2010 and they found 43% of Americans are engaged at what they do. They redid the poll, 2012. Look at that, it went up. 52% now. Guess what? It's still one of the lowest in the world. It means now that 48% of Americans are coming to work just to get the check. But they started to divide them. It wasn't just engaged or not engaged. Now they started to look at the fact that they're engaged, they're not engaged, or they're totally disengaged. There's a difference. Not engaged, there's still hope. If they're totally disengaged, it's time to get rid of them, right? If they're totally disengaged. So 52% were engaged, 18% were disengaged, 30% were engaged. I like to call it the Pac-Man effect. Didn't it look like Remember what I said? I love to play video games, so that's just the way I think, all right? The bottom line is there's a cost to the lack of engagement of our employees. The cost in the United States right now is $500 billion, they estimate. 3.3% of the U.S.'s $15 trillion economy is because our people aren't engaged. It seems fairly simple. How do we get our people more engaged? The fact is this, work is contractual, engagement is personal. Work is contractual and engagement is personal. So it's got to be at a more personal level. Employees fall into one of four engagement level categories. The four are this. I told you before, they're disengaged. They don't feel a sense of purpose. It's just a job. I'm just coming, because I want the check. They typically don't volunteer to take on extra tasks. The other one sort of in the middle is that they are engaged. They feel a sense of satisfaction, of commitment. At times they're motivated to go to the extra mile, sometimes volunteer to take extra tasks. But it's the top and the bottom of our graph, the actively disengaged. Those are the ones that I have to tell you, they're the ones that have little care for their job. They appear completely checked out. They complain about everything. And that's where we focus our attention sometimes. Guess what? They're kind of engaged because they're telling you they're disengaged. Does that make sense? That's the way I look at it. They're kind of engaged, and maybe there's still hope for them because at least they're voicing their opinion. They're voicing their feelings. And how do we tackle this challenge? Otherwise, we ask you to leave. And then at the top, obviously, we've got actively engaged. They volunteer to take on extra tasks all the time. They feel a sense of ownership, of accountability. And where we need to focus, I think, are on the middle two, the engaged and disengaged, because they're just kind of on the border, and they can go either way. And our job, I think, as management, as supervisors, as owners of our own business, is to figure out how do we make them actively engaged in the organization. We'll talk a little more about how to do that. But I love this quote. Donald Ream, who is an employee engagement expert, said this: "When you look at the increase in business value that occurs when a CEO and a senior leadership team focuses on employee engagement, you quickly discover there is no other single business issue that an organization could focus on that delivers a higher return at a lower cost than employee engagement." That's huge. And that's where I think business has to go in the future. I look at it as this. Really, engagement is a combination of two things. First, it's empowerment. And I know that word's been overused in the 90s and the 2000s, but I love the word only because empowerment to me means, do our people have the power to make a decision, or do they at least know where to go to if they have a problem or they need a decision to be made? Combine that with what I call accountability. And those two things, are they accountable for their actions? So the empowerment plus accountability equals engagement. Let me tell you where that came from. I mentioned before in another module, I had the opportunity to speak in India about 2 years ago. And I was talking about creativity and creative thinking. And a young guy came up to me and he said, Mr. Tobe, he said, in all due respect, if I tell my people to go be more creative, it's going to waste time, money, all our resources. Creativity without accountability equals chaos. And I love that. All he was saying was, if you're going to be creative, if you're going to do this kind of thing, then and about the customer experience, somebody has to own it. There has to be that sense of ownership. So I took that further and said that sense of ownership equals engagement in the organization as well. So how do we get people to understand that sense of ownership? Well, I'd say it's really this. Mutual accountability is what I call it. And mutual accountability in the organization is working toward common goals, sharing ownership for results, attitudes, consequences, and behaviors. Everybody okay?
Absolutely.